That's your newscast. Play it safe, play it smart. We'll see you next time. Sheriff's Department, we got an arrest warrant for you.
And welcome to this edition of Roll Call. Hopefully none of us will find ourselves in a confrontation unarmed. And if the occasion should arise, Howard Webb of Hitman instructs an officer how to properly utilize personal weapons.
I'm Howard Webb from Hitman, and we're here to do a segment on counter-assault tactics. About 83% of all police officers are assaulted with their assailant's hands, fists, or feet. There's a much greater chance that a police officer will be assaulted by being punched or kicked or bitten than being shot, stabbed, or ran over. However, we spend a great deal of our training working on deadly force, and very little time is really devoted in comparison to less than lethal force, especially when it deals with personal weapons. And so we're going to do a segment today regarding how to defend against personal weapons attack, and how that applies and integrates into edge weapon attack as well as a disarming technique. The counter-assault tactics, our program anyhow, is based on a couple basic principles. One, that the technique has to be integrated. In other words, you have to have technique commonality. The same technique should work for a personal weapons attack as well as an edge weapon attack or some kind of impact weapon attack, and apply toward disarming techniques of a handgun or a long gun. The second basic principle we use is the technique has to be based on natural principles, and the fact that only a gross motor skill is the only skill that is enhanced under stress. And so we base it purely on gross motor skills, because in any kind of assault situation, the officer is going to be highly stressed. I'd like to introduce Sue Long from the Seattle Police Department. Thank you, Sue, for helping me out here. Sue is going to perform the techniques as we first talk the technique through, and then work at a little higher speed. Well, one of the basic techniques of counter-assault tactics is the defensive posture. We want to develop a posture that was user-friendly, and not only user-friendly, but also positively influence the video camera as well as a witness. And so the hands are open, and in a gesture that simply says, calm down. We basically stole this from tactical communication, interpersonal communication skills, where we're trying to integrate the whole system, where what she has here is trying to calm the person down, non-threatening. And so from a witness standpoint, it looks like she tried to de-escalate the situation and not escalate the situation. So from here, as I come in and I throw a roundhouse type hook, she blocks and strikes simultaneously, at which time she grabs her head, delivers knee strikes to the abdomen, and then takes me to the ground. Now, in this particular segment, what she's doing, it's an emergency transition system, because it's dangerous and often not preferred to try to scramble to get these tools off your belt as far as your OC goes and your police baton in an attack situation. So we're using the personal weapons to stun, put the suspect on the ground, and then transition to a higher level of force. And we're also going to apply the same technique to an edged weapon attack. Most police officers who are successfully attacked with an edged weapon do not realize the person has a weapon. In fact, they think they're being punched. And so what the officer will do is brace for the punch or the edged weapon attack. As we come in, she applies the same technique, blocks and strikes, and then locks the arm, using a gross motor skill to lock the weapon arm so I can't pull it away. And I fixate on the weapon, where she simply locks me in, pulls me in tight, delivers knee strikes, very good. The difference now between the application with the edged weapon and the personal weapon is when she took me to the ground, she maintained control of the arm and kept a permanent pin. So as I went to the ground, rather than have to pull the weapon away from her and use it against her and engage again, she maintained that control, pinned me, and locked me. The same thing applies to a weapon disarming, where if I simply come in and present the weapon, she blocks and locks the weapon in and delivers the diversionary strike to the face. Again, as with the edged weapon, she locked the arm, delivered the diversionary strike, and this is critical, because when the weapon comes in and she blocks and locks the arm by wrapping it, the diversionary strike to the face is not powerful, but nevertheless, what it does is it's a distraction, at which time then she comes in and she traps the head. There's the knee strikes. And then applies a control technique to dislodge the weapon from the arm. It's interesting, when you look at combat through the ages, almost all weapons were used up close and personal prior to, of course, the advent of gunpowder, at which time the military weapons moved us back. Law enforcement, however, has maintained that close quarter contact because that's where we operate. We operate within that 2, 3, 4 foot distance with the suspect. And so consequently, where other martial arts and military arts have graduated and moved away from, close quarter contact, law enforcement still maintain that distance, that up close and personal. Thank you, Sue, very much for your assistance. I appreciate it.
And we are out of time on today's show, but I would like to remind you to register your training by calling 1-800